Regular meeting of the Webster County Board of Supervisors. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is item number 3, to approve today's agenda.
Move the agenda, Mr. Chairman. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on today's agenda? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is approved. Item number 4 is to approve the previous meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments on item number 4? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 5 is drainage claims, and we have none. Item number 6 is a hearing to discuss entering into a loan agreement in the amount of $490,000 for the purchase of real property for economic development. Do we have any written, any oral questions or comments on the hearing? All right, move on to item number 7.
Excuse me, can we close the hearing?
We'll close the hearing at 10:02. Item number 7 is to receive and place on file request for proposal for loan.
Chairman, make a motion to move item number 7. Second.
Do I have a motion and a second? Green?
I have 2 of them. Do you want the red? Or do you want,
Just say who they are.
one's from the Vail Bank. Do you want to know things?
The first one is from Avail Bank. It's a maximum of 2 years terms. Fixed rate for the $490,000 is 4.25%. And the borrower will pay all closing costs associated with the loan transaction. Signed, David M. Flaherty. And the second one is First State Bank. Interest rate of 3.26. Fixed loan term for 2 years. If it's a non-qualified tax exempt finance, the interest rate would be 4.55. And there is a no prepayment penalty for this loan. Signed, Craig Barber. I would ask for the motion to be amended to receive and place on file the 2 submittals.
That's what the motion
Is that what's the motion?
That
All
is
right.
the motion.
We're placing on file so we can review them or to get
To review
questions?
for next week.
Okay.
Yep. Any questions or comments on item number 7, the request for proposals for loan? If not, all in favor of accepting it?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion accepted. Item number 8 is to accept and place on file the status change from part-time to full-time for Brian Stamp, Corrections Officer, effective October 22nd, 2018, per the recommendation of Steve Ellifritz, Jail Administrator.
Chairman, I move item 8.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments on item number 8? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 9 is to accept and place on file the status change from part-time to full-time for Bradley Luke, Corrections Officer, effective October 22nd, 2018, per the recommendation of Steve Ellifritz, Jail Administrator.
Mr. Chairman, motion to move item 9. Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 10 is to accept and place on file the status change from part-time to full-time for Ashley Kiefer, Corrections Officer, effective October 22nd, 2018, per the recommendation of Steve Ellifritz, Jail Administrator.
Mr. Chairman, motion to move item 10.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on item number 10. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item 10 carries. Item number 11 is to accept and place on file the hiring and employment of Miranda Bass, Corrections Officer, part-time, effective October 15, 2018, at the rate of $15.93 per hour, per the recommendation of Steve Ellifritz, Jail Administrator.
Move item 11.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on item number 11? All in favor? Opposed? Item 11 carries. Item number 12 is to accept and place on file the resignation of Brandy Alexander, building clerk, full-time, effective October 26, 2018, per recommendation of Carrie Prescott, Director of Webster County Public Health.
Mr. Chairman, I motion to move item 12.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on item number 12? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 13 is to approve and authorize the Director of Webster County Public Health to fill the vacancy in Public Health due to the resignation of Brandy Alexander.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we move item 13.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 14 is to accept and place on file the hiring and employment of Sarah Wood, support recovery aide full-time, effective October 22nd, 2018, at the rate of $15.58 per hour, per recommendation of Jessica Winmont, Supervisor, Child Support Recovery Unit.
Chairman, I move item 14.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments on item number 14? All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 15 is to accept and place on file a request to fill vacancy of employee in the Treasurer's Office due to the retirement of Kim Andrews effective September 28, 2018, per the recommendation of Jan Messerly, County Treasurer.
Mr. Chairman, I motion to table this for next Tuesday, the 16th. I'll second that motion.
I have a motion to table item number 15. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 15 is tabled. Item 16 is to accept and place on file salary increase for Melinda Jacobs from $20.78 per hour to $21.12 per hour per labor agreement effective October 24, 2018, per recommendation of Jan Messerly, County Treasurer.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we move item number 16.
Second.
Motion and a second on item number 16. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is approved. Item number 17 is to adopt a resolution number 2018-24, a resolution supporting the approval of an application for a veteran utilizing investments to leverage development or build grant funding to the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Resolution 2018-24, resolution supporting the approval of an application for better utilizing investments to leverage development build funding to the U.S. Department of Transportation. Whereas the City of Fort Dodge has identified the need to construct an intermodal hub in downtown Fort Dodge to accommodate the development of the Warden Plaza and the rec facility. And whereas a grant has been made available to the U.S. Department of Transportation to apply for funding to construct an intermodal hub. And whereas the Department of Intermodal Hub supports a number of planning initiatives and economic revitalization strategies for the downtown and the region. Now therefore be it resolved that the Webster County Board of Supervisors fully supports the submitted grant application to the U.S. Department of Transportation for funds through the BUILD program and hereby request support from our partners.
Thank you. Questions or comments on the resolution of support?
So this grant would cover $70.63 million of the $11.5 million grant, or cost of the intermodal hub, just
And there's no county obligation, it's just we're supporting this.
Yep, it's a letter of support.
What is an intermodal hub?
It's a parking lot.
Parking grant.
Thank you.
parking, DART would go through there, they're gonna rent bicycles.
Yeah. Isn't it meant, they're basically meant to park and then get on a dark bus.
Parking ride type thing.
Cargill or whatever, that's the idea.
All right, it's a roll call. Supervisor Lefferts?
Leffler,
Supervisor Thode,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
and Campbell is aye. Item number 18 is to receive and place on file fiscal year 19 first quarter Veterans Affairs Persons Served report.
Good morning, Dan Lomzewski, VA Director of Webster County. First quarter report, 9 veterans came in for assistance with rent, utilities, and for a total payout of $2,833.44. I also like to add that's, once again, since we implemented the new county guidelines of really helping the veterans help themselves. That's something the county has to put into it, so it's been working very, very well.
Do you feel the needs still being met?
Oh, yes.
Thanks, Dan. Questions or comments on item number 18? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Item number 19 is to receive and place on file order report ending September 30th, 2018 for the Webster County Sheriff Department.
Well, I have to apologize, I brought some paperwork over here, but I forgot that piece of paper. As you can tell. Yeah, I figured you would. As you can tell, everything substantially stays about the same. The only thing that we're missing, mileage runs pretty consistent, county fees collected, which is state mandated what the fees are. Miscellaneous fees, sales and garnishments, which this one is, it's been in the paper, this one has a substantial chance to have a big increase next quarter, depending on how a couple sales go. Weapons permits, pretty consistent, other than we missed the revenue source of the permit cards, which we no longer have that since July 1st. The state does those, so we don't get any revenue from that. But yeah, as you can see, with all we dispersed $69,535.84 for weapons permits of $5,350 for a total of $74,885.84. And check in the amount of $14,905.42 was delivered to the Webster County Treasurer. That covers the county fees collected. The rest isn't the county's money anyway. Other than the weapons permits, we get a share of that.
Questions or comments? Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 20 is to receive and place on file the following annual legal management updates. Sandstorm site at 3053 Madison Avenue, Fort Dodge. Wasika site at 1793 230th Street, Moreland. Hanson site, 290th Street, Farmville. Brettenburg Finisher, 2424 350th Street, Dayton. And P1211 at 1134 290th Street, Eagle Grove.
Chairman, I'll move on 20.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Questions or comments? I know we have one on item number E, the Eagle Grove site. Even though it's not in Webster County, some of the new work is applied in Webster County. That's why it's on here. Any other questions or comments on item number 20?
I think also on item E, it says that they changed their crop rotation, and the rest of them, it appears they did not make any changes on theirs.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 21 is Bob Lincoln, CEO of County Social Services and Disability Service Agreement.
Morning, Board.
Good morning.
Bob Lincoln, CEO with County Social Services. You guys are fast. I'm going to be on about 11 o'clock. I want to start by sharing with you, I don't know if Allison had the opportunity to share our flyer with you, kind of putting our program together. Part of our campaign, we're launching it out to communities. It starts with a conversation, trying to increase public awareness, trying to get out the message of what county social services is available to do to assist the community. As you see in the pamphlet, the first section talks about the quadrants, how we're organized with our quadrant team here with Allison Hauser's leadership. She's really pulled together a very tight professional team that have been doing some amazing work in the community. We've duplicated that 3 times throughout the region, and just really pleased with the good work that's been done. The second section talks about those crisis services. And again, we've been building up the pieces of the crisis services, and now we have to start weaving and connecting those services. We had a case in Waupun that taught us what wasn't working. We had a 12-year-old sitting in the emergency room in a rural hospital for over a week. But then as we dive in and try to figure out what is the gap there, what is the service, what is the funding need, it's going to take a lot more collaboration and work to solve these problems. Because at the end of the day, what we're really focused on are those complex needs individuals, that less than 1% of the population where they just can't go to the mental health center, or they just can't go to their provider and get the assistance they need. They're involved with corrections, they're involved with the courts, they're involved with protective services, they're involved with the mental health services, they're involved with long-term support services, and what can we do to make the system work better for them. The last section talks about our public awareness, and again, that's part of that social marketing campaign. I'm going to be very intentional about getting out to the smaller communities. We kind of spend our time in our county seats. There's a lot of small communities where we reach out and connect with folks. I had the opportunity at the annual correction forum, and law enforcement is particularly concerned that as we look across Iowa, the rates of crime are actually increasing in the rural areas at a greater rate than the urban areas. And some of the thoughts there that there's a kind of a displacing of folks with addiction issues and affordable housing that moves some challenges to these communities. And so we want to make sure that we're responding and moving with that need. We also continue to do a lot of mental health first aid training. We've got 2 classes scheduled in Mason City for this month. I think it was last year I had the opportunity to do 2 classes here with the city of Fort Dodge, and so that continues to be available for any group that can get at least 15 individuals together. And we ask that they provide the room refreshment and registration. And then County Social Services will fund the manuals and will provide the instruction. We also do youth mental health first aid as well, which is a similar curriculum targeted to support those kids that may be experiencing early onset of a mental illness. So that's kind of the program in a nutshell, how we're trying to create a system of care and move forward. Then I had a couple other handouts. I wanted to visit with you a little bit about our financial situation, which has gotten some attention of late. The first sheet I'm handing out is our monthly summary report. This is, in January of this year, we found ourselves running over budget nearly 3% in January, which, as you know, once you set down that course, then it doesn't get better quicker. And so one of the outcomes of that was developing a very concise one-page summary that the board can see a much clearer picture of where we're at, so we can be quicker in responding to any budget needs. So if you look at this, we're looking at the current month, which would actually be the end of September. Our expenditures for September were $1.3 million. That's compared to the previous month of $1.4 million. Through the efforts of our quadrants teams, we've been leveraging folks into Medicaid, and we continue to reduce our monthly obligation, continuing to support those people that need our assistance, but getting them on to their Medicaid. If you roll up the first quarter, we spent $4.1 million, and so you can see after the first quarter, and this is all cash, by the way, this is actually money paid out, we're at 23% for a quarter of the year, so now we're 2% under budget, and we should be on track to be closer to $16.5 million for year end. Our budget 18.3 was anticipating spending some additional reserve dollars. I think this year, instead of spending reserve dollars, we'll be putting some reserve dollars back into our fund balance, which leads to the opportunity of looking at what we want to invest in going forward. We had a good quadrant meeting here in Fort Dodge a month or two ago. I think that was in August. And the need that keeps coming back to this community is really the lack of any psychiatric beds in the community. Since Trinity closed their psychiatric unit many years ago, folks have had to leave the community to get that psychiatric care. Now with availability of subacute beds, we're hoping we can find a provider and find a platform where we can open up what's envisioned by House File 2456 as an access center where folks can be, if not in a medically acute emergency, they can be served and connected with a provider in their community. We've had conversations with Unity Point who are very interested in exploring that. Obviously, their clients have that need. We've also been talking with Community and Family Resources, which is currently providing a crisis stabilization beds for us. But we're trying to envision with their new building if they could actually bring subacute in there and do detox and the psychiatric stabilization. But the rules are still being written on the access center, so we're patiently working through and looking at those opportunities. What you also see on this one pager is you're actually seeing our cash position to this very day. We paid $184,000 today, so for this month, we spent $807,000. So I think we're even on track this month to reduce our expenditures. Some other things that we have that are going to be taking pressure off of our budget to, again, free up dollars is our crisis center in Waterloo is online to be Medicaid eligible by November 1st, I believe. We think with that reimbursement that could reduce our allocation to them between $200,000 and $400,000, which then we would hope would be dollars we can invest in this community to get that access center up and going. Our actual ending cash balance now is $1.7 million. So this is the last period, if you will, before we collect the first half of this year's levy. So by next month, or within at least the next 60 days, we should have close to $8 million additional brought into our Fund 10 as half of that 3518 levy. Any questions on that? Got one more report to share with you. So this is our preliminary projected accrual report, so it's not final, and it's certainly not ready for audit by any means. But what we wanted to do was to take another look to see what were the drivers for our budget crisis last year. And what I highlighted for you there was basically three areas. The first in that the supported community line item, where we spent about $600,000 over budget. Essentially, based on our projection, we overutilized folks at an excessive level of care. In other words, our funding process was approving dollar levels that really weren't supported by a review of that process. And also we had some folks that were diverted out of the Medicaid system that should have been receiving their services funded through the Medicaid program. The next area is the Assertive Community Treatment Team. The Assertive Community Treatment Team, if you're not familiar with that, is a group of professionals that support folks with chronic and persistent mental illness in the community. Berry Hill runs one of the, if not the first, rural assertive community treatment team, and has been very successful. This line item was our launch of the Assertive Community Treatment Team in Waterloo. We had budgeted $450,000 to finalize that launch, as, again, this should have been a fully reimbursed Medicaid service, and what we ran into was managed care. And we really struggled getting those contracts in place, and that caused us to use our dollars for a longer period than we had anticipated. In fact, in January, I was forced to send a notice to the department and the agency and the MCOs if the contracting issues weren't addressed, that we were going to pull our funding. And so then things happened, and now they're fully contracted. With House File 2456, the state is requiring 22 assertive community treatment teams throughout the state by 2021. So it's very cool that County Social Services already has a good assertive community treatment team in place in this community. We now have one in Waterloo. By population, we'll need to launch one more in Mason City and then one in the West Union area, and we would be in full compliance of that law. The last item there is on the back page is as supported community living 6 and over beds. Those again are residential care facility beds. Our projection was based on a number that, again, I think was driven a lot by the pressure from the MCOs. Folks weren't getting connected to habilitation as quickly, and they were diverted to RCFs, and we were overutilizing or overfunding those levels of care as well, as we found out as we dug in. The success that our quadrant team has had is driving those numbers down dramatically. And as a system, we were just counting up the number of residential care facilities that we've closed since becoming a region. We've closed 5 residential care facilities since County Social Services was in place. So that means people with chronic and persistent mental illness are not being moved into large group settings, but they're moving into the community, moving into homes, and being supported by the likes of assertive community treatment team. So that's part of the shift that has been underway. And then to give some context for that budget overrun, the $2 million overrun that was identified last year, again, was on a cash basis. And part of that driver was, as we tightened up our financials, we tightened up our accounts payable and our reimbursement to the counties. So now we pay bills much quicker. We turn around our reimbursement to our member counties within 30 to 60 days. And what that caused us to do is experience about $1 million additional overage in cash. If you look at our projected accrual, our overage from our budget, our original budget, $20.1 million, to our projected accrual, $20.6, we actually ran over about $500,000. Again, not a good thing, but in the context of $2 million, it was not as dramatic, if you will. That's a lot of information. Any questions? And again, I so appreciate the leadership that Supervisor Thode has brought to the board. We've moved through a lot of changes and a lot of challenges. I think we've got our financial house in order. I think we're developing a very strong organization in terms of our team, and I think now is another opportunity for us to reinvest. The levy will obviously be probably the next biggest decision we have going forward. Based on our current trend, I think the CSS board clearly will have the option to hold the line on the levy. I don't think there's any pressure without significant new investment to raise the levy. The other thing that has been going on in the state, if you will, is comparing how the other regions are levying. And again, because we were one of the first regions, and because we invested a lot of dollars in new services, we have a higher level levy than our neighbors. And as I visit with them, they're moving up and we're moving down. And I think as a system, we're going to have to figure out what does the state of Iowa want that average to be. Because we're obviously not going to be able to sustain a levy that's an outlier. That's more than our neighbors. And conversely, we don't want to go down to the lowest levy either. That then limits our capacity to maintain quality services. So that's the big challenge for you as elected officials, is to give us guidance on the big question. Questions, comments?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next, now, citizens' opportunity to address the board with items not on the agenda. All right, Board of Supervisor Committee reports.
Nothing this week.
All righty, I'll take a motion to go into closed session pursuant to code section 21.5J to discuss the purchase of real estate at 1033.
So moved.
Motion and a